Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. Rassie Erasmus is set to trim his squad down to a 36-man squad for the first two tests of the Rugby Championship against Australia. And we've used 48 players across the first four games of the season. And very interesting to see the different game time being given to different players, some of the different positions some of the players played in, and kind of the way they balance trying to give some new players opportunities whilst still giving older players some game time as well. But now it is time to really turn our attention to the future and the now. And the reason I say it like that, because we've got to look at, for example, who's going to get to the 2027 World Cup. And we need to decide who is good enough to be playing in the best Springbok squad right now. And that is going to be the big sort of question when he cuts down 10 players in the squad. And it's a big call to make in terms of some, maybe older players who might be left out. And this might be sort of the end of their time in the Springboks themselves. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I think the big thing about this is going to be about balancing, trying to see if your older, more experienced players who have won back-to-back World Cups, who are, make your sort of your best 23, are still at that level. Because if the younger players are playing at a higher level, or even at the same level, you've got to back the youth, because there's a much bigger chance that they're going to be at that level in 2 years' time. Even Etzebeth was talking about the fact that he's not ready to give up that number 4 jersey, but for him it's about making sure that he continues to play at that level for the next couple of years. Before we sort of look at some of the game time being given and sort of give the 10 most likely players to sort of leave camp, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Right, there are the 46 players we used in the first 4 games, and very interesting to sort of see the amount of minutes that they all got. And I think that shows an interesting picture with regards to who we reckon we might see departing the squad itself. So something we know is not going to leave right at the top there. Kurt Lawrence, Damien Delendi, Marco Verstappen, and Cheslin Colby, all playing lots and lots of minutes. Jesse Creel as well. 2 back-to-back 8-minute performances, similar from Vincent Chatuka. So what we basically need to start doing is looking more towards the bottom, really, and kind of seeing which of those players might be dropping out. And I think there's a couple of sort of big flags. Obviously, Aspevis is in this list, as is Jean Klein. So those are 2 guaranteed players that will not feature in that 36-man squad. Jean Klein has gone back to Munster, where he will continue his rehab and return from injury. Looks like he might actually be back from the New Zealand part of the series, to be honest. I reckon we might see him for Argentina, and then we might see him at the end of the year. Jasper Wiese banned for 4 games. He's obviously missed 1 game already. 3 more games to go, which will be the 2 Australian games and the first All Blacks test, unless they do appeal, which by all accounts it sounds like they're not going to do, and which would have allowed him to then play both of those 2 All Blacks test if his appeal was successful. They managed to bring it down to 3 games, for example. So big calls to make, very, very big calls to make. And I've basically sort of gone through this, looked at what Rassie Erasmus has said, looked at kind of what they've been saying about certain players, and sort of tried to basically predict the 10 players who I think are going to be departing the squad. Now, we actually don't know what the makeup of the squad is going to be. There could be some big calls, but Rassie Erasmus basically said the squad is going to be more experienced, and it's going to be the selection of players they believe can play the way they want to play. So that itself has got sort of 2 parts. First of all, it's the experience part, which indicates maybe an older type of squad. So your younger players, for example, like an Ethan Hooker, maybe not going to feature. But then he talks about the fact that it's about getting players in that can play the way they want to play. So now we've got a whole brand new sort of game plan. So somebody like a Grant Williams, for example, is absolutely key to the way we want to start playing, which means that, obviously he's going to always be sort of retained, but that sort of gives you an indication that there might be some players who might be less experienced, but they view them as essential to the way we want to start playing and the way we want to start building the side to the 2027 World Cup. So let's basically try and get into the 10 players who I think could be departing. Right, number 1, obviously we know Jean Klein is gone. His injury, worst possible time. I think this was a big opportunity for him to get some game time back in the squad, and he just can't get it right. He just keeps getting those injuries just as he comes back into the Springbok squad, and has basically played next to no rugby for the Boks since the World Cup final, actually, ironically. So, he's gone from being in a World Cup final to not being able to get any games for the Boks, mainly through injury. And then obviously we also know that Jasper Wiese will not be part of that squad due to that ban. So that's 2 down, 8 to go. First on the list, Jean-Luc Deprez. Now, I think that he had an opportunity to stake a claim through no fault of anybody's, he had to depart the squad after the Barbarians game, and due to the birth of his child, and it was basically on maternity leave. As a result, I'd be surprised if he's included in the squad. The only thing that might save him is if they look at him as a genuine number 8 option, for example, given the fact that Jasper Wiese is not involved. But I think at the moment, he's probably surplus to requirements, and I'd be very surprised if he were in the squad itself. Then I've gone with Bowen Fenton. Now, very interesting to sort of see what the prop makeup's going to be. We usually kind of go with 5 props. We might go with an extra prop. Jan-Hendrik Wessels might be kept in, for example, as a prop/hooker. We're waiting to sort of hear about injuries. Now, as far as we understand, there's no Gerard Stennekamp set to return. Intutuka Klunu was looking apparently quite positive when Rassie Erasmus spoke at one of the press conferences, and there could be a chance for him to come back in. Now, in terms of your loose head options, Oxenchair, obviously, your number 1 loose head. Then you've got a Thomas du Toit, Bowen Venter, Jan-Hendrik Wessels. Now, Bowen Venter playing just the one game. I thought he actually played very well, to be fair. So I definitely have him in and around that squad. But again, going with the experience, I'd be surprised if he manages to keep that place. Then about Willie Leroux. Now, this will be a massive call, because is it going to be 100 and done for Willie Leroux? I personally think it probably should be right now. If there are injuries, if we are going to New Zealand and Apele Fassi, for example, picks up an injury, I would take him to New Zealand for that experience if you're potentially looking at him as an option. But right now, he is not better and he's not ahead for me of Damian Williamson and Apele Fassi. As a result, I don't think that we should be keeping him in the squad, because I think that we need to make sure that we're giving the other players who are going to be part of the next World Cup that opportunity. At the end of the day, right now, Willie Leroux does not get to the next World Cup. I think, he knew he wasn't going to give that. Rassie Erasmus has been quite open about the fact that he thinks he's not going to give that. They wants to give him 100 tests. He's gotten to that number, and I think at the moment, I think that could be it, to be honest, because if we're going to start phasing him out now. There's no point keeping him in a squad, giving him opportunities ahead of somebody who will be at the next World Cup. So unfortunately, Willie Leroux, I love the player, brilliant player, had a phenomenal career, but I don't think makes the squad. Samuel Murat didn't play a lot of rugby for the Boks, didn't impress really when he did. And, just the 56 minutes across the 4 different games probably indicates that he's not really on the radar at the moment as it stands. Kobus Wiese, for example, getting more opportunities. So, yeah, I'm leaving Samuel Murat out. And the next one is going to be Ethan Hooker. Now, a lot of people will be upset about this, but I just don't see where he really fits in. He's not within our top 4 centers. He's definitely not ahead of, our 4 wings. So he's definitely a player for the future. And he got his opportunity, but just 24 minutes across the series means I'll be very surprised if he stays in the squad. Then I've got Neertling Verschuur. Now, big question marks over Neertling Verschuur versus Asanate and Tlabakanya. I think one of them drops out. From a tight head point of view, you've got Wilco Low, you've got Vincent Koch, you've got Thomas du Toit who can cover it. And I think Thomas du Toit will be the 5th prop because he can cover both. Then you've got Asanate and Tlabakanya and Neertling Verschuur between the two. Now, I think that they've spoken more highly about Asanate and Tlabakanya previously. They sort of see him, I think, as a long-term option, but somebody who's quite talented and sort of adapt to the way they want to play. For me, it's a bit of a toss of the coin. Personally, I would actually have both, and I'd be leaving out Vincent Koch. I wasn't very impressed with what Vincent Koch did over the weekend. He is the oldest player in the squad, and I think that I'll be looking at these two players, and that's Natin Tlabakanya and Neertling Verschuur, saying, right, these two players are potentially the future. I'd be keeping them in the squad as it is. Then Marnus van der Merwe. Now, again, I would be keeping him in the squad. What I think they'll do is go Bongi Manami, Malcolm Marx, and they'll keep Jan-Hendrik Wessels as a loose head as well as a hooker. I think Marnus van der Merwe had a better game than Bongi Manami, and I think that he is very talented and could be a big game player for us. I really do rate him, and I think that he looked really good over the weekend. But again, 1 cap for him over the series, 2 games, 88 minutes. I think he actually might have gotten a bit more game time than Bongi Manambi officially, but not by much. We're talking like 10 minutes. And my gut says that they'll stick with Bongi Manambi. They're very loyal, the Bok coaches. They don't often just sort of discard players after 1 or 2 poor matches. And then the big one, maybe the controversial one, we might go 4 scrum halves. We often do go 4 scrum halves. If we don't, who drops out? Now, for me, it's between Morne van den Berg and Kobus Reinach. Kobus Reinach played 60 minutes in total. He played 36 minutes off the bench against Barbarians. He played 24 minutes off the bench against Italy in that second test. Morley van den Berg, on the other hand, played 44 minutes in their first game against the Barbarians, played 54 minutes starting for Italy. He also got a man of the match performance in that Italy game. Now, a lot of people have been quite critical about him, but again, he got a man of the match performance. He's somebody that they talk about a lot in the press conferences as someone that they look at in the future. So you could send Morley van den Berg back to the Lions. But I think if we're looking at a long-term point of view, I think that Faf de Klerk over the weekend showed that he's still there. And for me, probably our second choice after Garth Williams. And I think Morley van den Berg, right now, I think it's a bit of a flip of a coin between him and Kobus Reiner. Kobus Reiner, far more experienced. Morley van den Berg, the next generation. And if they're talking about a third choice scrum off, I'd rather go with a younger player and let him work more with the box than a Kobus Reiner. Again, we could go for example. We might see somebody like a Makasonoma Pimpi drop out. And you kind of, work it like that. But this for me would make a little bit of sense right now, might be an unpopular opinion. So those sort of my 10 players that dropped out. I think players who are on the fence really include the likes of Kobus Wiese, maybe a Franco Mostert, somebody like a Vincent Tuka. I think will stay in the squad, but he could potentially be deemed service to requirements with the return of Peter Steph du Toit. I personally wasn't particularly impressed. Marco Verstappen in the first 2 games, but had a good third game. So it all sort of it's going to be a lot of big calls. Now, we know the kind of the core group. I think we basically could very confidently name about 30, 32 names. It's those sort of 4 extra names, I think, that we're sort of waiting to see what kind of direction Rassie Erasmus wants to go. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.